Hey everyone, welcome to the live stream today. It is December 30th, Tuesday. So, the liberal scheme to get rich quick while corrupting the United States political system becomes clear as the Minnesota tip of the iceberg starts to be exposed. That is corruption. It's liberal corruption. It's getting the U.S. government to spend money. And then liberals stand there with their hands out to receive the cash. Also, this spills over into how people are getting elected. Political control, as the Democrats are well known to do. Once they get their foot in the door, once they get a little bit of control, they fight to get a supermajority in states, then they control the state effectively. Will the U.S. electorate wake up to this destructive fact? I do not know. Hopefully before this year's midterms. Also, mind control young people in the U.S. are being used to commit heinous acts of violence and disruption. What does that mean? That means young people are susceptible to the liberal mind virus, which is taught in academia, and then they're put on SSRIs. These are pharmaceutical drugs that gets rid of the resistance, the people's natural resistance to commit violent acts like stabbing your parents multiple times. So we're going to get into this and more. But first, as I mentioned previously, I have brought back the word of the day. And today we are going to start with the word corruption. What is corruption? A dishonest or illegal behavior, especially by powerful people, such as government officials, Tim Walz, a departure from the original or from what is pure or correct. In other words, it's what you shouldn't do. And I have been, for some time now, been talking about moral depravity, and I don't like to moralize. That's not my intent. But to understand what a moral framework is and how you should have moral structure in your life. In other words, knowing the difference between right and wrong. Some people can't seem to figure this out in this shifting Overton window as we move into more and more progressive times. All right, before any further ado, over 37 headlines to get through today. You usually get through over 30 news articles within the hour, slightly over the hour lately. But let's not waste any more time and let's read the news. First up, New York Post, $5 billion in questionable rental assistance under Biden revealed, including to thousands of deceased tenants and non-citizen, according to a HUD report. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, report found that more than $5 billion in taxpayer funds went to questionable rental assistance recipients during the final year of the Biden administration. And what I've said time and time again here on this live stream is that Biden, the reason we have this inflation hangover, as much as Trump has tried to correct it, Trump's policies have been correcting it, is that Biden was pushing money out the door at the end of his administration in the final year. Usually when the spending, if it isn't spent, it gets clawed back within the next administration, et cetera. So these funds, including 30,000 deceased tenants and thousands of potential non-citizens, according to this report. So hopefully we're going to see a federal task force involved in uncovering all this corruption, as Trump said in his previous administration, draining the swamp, which he's doing now. People don't realize what liberalism is. Liberalism is the federal government spending money, and a lot of times on dubious policy, whether it's the Green New Deal or seemingly compassionate care for the citizenry, feeding children, et cetera, whatever the title is not always what happens. And as I said previously, when you increase the velocity of spending, you have hands just going into the stream and pulling out money. Sometimes the majority of the money never goes to what it's supposed to go to, what it claims to go to. So once I was working within the organization Save the Children, and I saw a pie chart, it's an internal chart of where all the money went, that when people donated to Save the Children, they saw the Sally Struthers commercial on TV about, and then they showed starving children and you wanted to give to Save the Children. But a majority of that money went to administration, and CEOs of Save the Children made $10 million a year or what have you, something ridiculous. And very small amount ended up going to those people. And so if you do donate to organizations, you got to make sure where that money goes to. Okay, let's continue with the article here from the New York Post. HUD officials said a large concentration of suspicious payments went to New York, California, and Washington, D.C., with dead recipients getting at least some funds in 50 states in what federal officials are calling widespread abuse of taxpayer dollars under the Biden administration. Under all liberal administrations. So Biden was replaced. You see what the Biden administration was? Joe Biden was just a figurehead. He didn't really govern at all, but he had the cabal behind him of liberals and progressives just pushing through their policy using the auto pen, et cetera, including getting the conspirators within the Democratic Party on board to vote for legislation that was allowing this, when they said the Inflation Reduction Act, actually what it did is create more inflation by pushing through the Green New Deal. So it goes on to say a massive abuse of taxpayer dollars not only occurred under President Biden's watch, whether he was watching or not is speculative, but was effectively incentivized by his administration's failure to implement strong financial controls, resulting in billions worth of potential improper payments. Like I said, they do it on purpose. It's called greasing your constituency. I'm sure this is going to happen under the Trump administration with the tariff payouts, tariff dividend. But the funny thing about Trump is he's not greasing his constituents. He's greasing the people that didn't vote for him, which, is a good political tactic. Moving on with this article, HUD's Office of the Chief Financial Officer uncovered $5.8 billion of questionable payments out of nearly $50 billion in total federal rental assistance to public housing authorities, contractors, landlords, and non-federal entities in fiscal 2024. And if you know how this works, They're, the states are giving the money through block grants. And this is where the money comes from for Section 8 and other assistance that goes to public housing authorities and contractors, et cetera, et cetera. The point is there's no oversight and there's no rigorous application process. There is a application process, and once you're approved, there's no follow-up to see whether that person A exists or whether those monies are being allocated properly to what they're supposed to be allocated for. So let's move on to the tip of the iceberg. One American News is reporting Kristi Noem launches massive investigation into Somali-linked Minneapolis child care fraud. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem announced at the start of the massive investigation on child care and other rampant fraud in Minneapolis on Monday in response to an independent journalist reporting. That's Nick Shirley. Reporting on massive alleged fraud tied to Somali business owners. Now, here's the thing. Nick Shirley did a great job. We don't have any problems with what Nick Shirley did. The only thing I do is, the only problem I had where it's a little dicey is you're not allowed to film on private property without the owner's permission. That is what it is. You can always shoot from outside, whatever, but if you go into a building, you just can't immediately stop filming. However, the caveat there is that if you're uncovering illegal activity, lies the loophole. And that's how Project Veritas was able to do their stings and stuff without, and different states have different laws about secretly recording people without their knowledge. Like in my state, it's pretty strong. So Kristi Noem went on to say that the DHS is on the ground in Minneapolis, going door to door at suspected fraud sites. The American people deserve answers on how taxpayer money is being used and arrests when abuse is found. Under the leadership of Secretary Noem, DHS is working to deliver results. So this, I guess, was a spokesperson. And we'll just show a picture. It's part of a video here that shows Homeland Security investigations people at one of the locations in Minneapolis. The great thing is that it just shows them at the door talking to the owner. And we're going to get into some of the details surrounding that. Now, did they get a warrant? See, this is my problem. Using Nick Shirley's investigation, did you go to a judge and get a warrant to enter those facilities to see if there are even children there? That was the whole point of what Nick Shirley was doing last week. So if you're going to uncover fraud, well, you've got to go look in the establishments. You can't just stand outside and talk to the business owner and say, hey, are you conducting child care on the premises? Oh, yes, we are. Okay, good. Have a nice day. All right, moving on. Post-millennial Minnesota government says quality learning, it's actually Quality Learning Center at Center of Somali Fraud Expose is closed as it's all of a sudden full of kids. We've never seen kids go in there until today. The parking lot is still empty at the time. The now infamous Quality Learning Center, which was made famous after an expose by independent reporter Nick Shirley, is now reportedly shut down. However, on Monday, it was overrun with children. Surprise! And this is of course, this is Somali because it's all third world countries, do this when you're caught, that all of a sudden you undo what you've been accused of. You know what I mean? If you're accused of infidelity, the next thing you know, look, I'm here with my wife everywhere. You know, that's not the way it works. You've already been accused. It's already been documented. It's too late now. A resident who spoke to the Post said that the center is usually a ghost town and that they've never seen children go into the center until today. And that was Monday. We've never seen kids go in there until today. That parking lot is empty all the time. And I was under the impression that the place was permanently closed. And the Minneapolis government said that the place was closed last week. So apparently Nick Shirley showed up when the place was closed, but today it's open, or yesterday it was open and full of kids. We're going to get to the point here right now. So this is from Fox News. Unearthed surveillance exposes how parents were allegedly involved in Minnesota's daycare fraud scheme. Minnesota, FBI Director Kash Patel said the agency has surged additional personnel and investigative resources to Minnesota. But what are they doing? Do you have warrants or not? By the time you get your warrants, they're going to have children in there. Why? Because the parents are in on it. Video taken from local Fox report from 2018 shows parents checking their children into a daycare center in Hennepin County, Minnesota, only to leave with their children minutes later. So they didn't even leave their children there. The video was taken from a surveillance camera as part of a case prosecuted by Hennepin County, according to the 2018 Fox 9 report. Under the scheme, low-income parents would sign in their children for daycare services so the providers could then claim reimbursement for the services that were never truly provided, never rendered. The outlet said, according to the surveillance video, some days no families would show up, but that the daycares would claim reimbursements for the government nonetheless. Another video in the broadcast showed a man handing an envelope to a parent with an alleged kickback payment for participation in the scheme. Well, what is this? This is how it works. The money doesn't go to one specific individual, doesn't go to one company. It's spread throughout. Let's go to our next headline from the Federalist. See, the thing is with the Minnesota thing, it is the tip of the iceberg, and the case has been proven out. It's like Tyler Robinson. The case is proven out. The fraud is there. Even after the allegations of fraud came in, they didn't start getting kids in there until Nick Shirley went snooping around. Where is CBS News 60 Minutes? That was usually their fare. I don't know. But there's more corruption. The Federalist reports top attorney for special counsel Jack Smith previously spiked Clinton Foundation investigation. And we have oversight committee looking into this. Ray Husler, the then head of the Department's Justice and Public Integrity Section, PIN, withheld information from the U.S. Attorney's Office investigating the Clinton Foundation under Trump 1.0, his first term. Hustler would later downplay and or provide inconsistent details concerning the Clinton Foundation probe to both Trump, DOJ, and special counsel John Durham's office. In spite of, or maybe because of, that history, special counsel Jack Smith selected Hustler to help lead the criminal witch hunt against Trump, with Hustler reportedly recommending Smith subpoena the toll records of nearly a dozen congressional Republicans. Those are phone call records. The article goes on to say but it would be the documents Senator Chuck Grassley released 2 weeks ago, which revealed Hustler's role in weaponizing of the DOJ was not limited to the Get Trump efforts by the Biden administration and Special Counsel Smith. Those documents suggest Hustler sought to thwart the DOJ's investigation into the Clinton Foundation. So Grassley has been hot on the trail of that spiked investigation into the Clinton Foundation and whether or not anybody was really serious about going after Hillary Clinton. Because, as I said before, it was espionage. So here's how it worked. It's called a digital dead drop. And if you heard this before, I'm just going to reiterate for people that hadn't heard it. Foreign governments donate to the Clinton Foundation. Then, in an unsecured server in her bathroom of her home in Chappaqua, New York, Hillary Clinton would place classified documents within emails on her server that was unsecured. Hackers for these foreign governments would then go in and retrieve the digital dead drop. That's why Hillary Clinton destroyed all of her digital devices, bleach bit that computer, so we never found out the full extent of what was occurring there. Because it literally is espionage for profit. It's not because they have allegiance to another foreign government ideologically or something like that. That has nothing to do with it. It's corruption. It was specifically done for money. The main reason is the apathy towards America, freedom in general, because it's part of the agenda to undermine constitutional freedoms within this country so they can't be promulgated worldwide. Is what usually was, at least in the second half of the 20th century, was the mission of the United States. Some could say for hundreds of years now, since the inception of the United States, or since the United States has become a world power, that their charge was not spreading democracy, but spreading freedom. Now, people could say freedom and democracy are inextricably linked. But liberty is different than freedom, and republicanism, states governed by the people, is different than democracy. As I often say, democracy is a process, not a government. All right, moving on to the next article here from the Post-Millennial. Source-linked DC activist group teaches how to be skeptical jurors to combat Trump administration policies. Jury duty is not just a civic responsibility, it's a powerful tool for ensuring fairness and justice. So, it's called jury nullification. So, conservative populists have been talking about this for some time. And this is what it is. However, the left has adopted it and is using it unfairly. So, what jury nullification is pointing out inconsistencies in the law and refusing to convict people who are exercising their constitutional right. This is different than what the left is doing here. Free DC, along with the black activist group Harriet's Wildest Dreams, have been hosting jury information project meetings in DC with an upcoming date of the teach-in being described as a discussion on what it really means to serve on a jury and how we can use that role. There's a verbiage, how we can use that role to protect our people, not all people, especially those with marginalized identities who are disproportionately targeted by the criminal legal system. Participation in juries is vital to safeguarding the rights of those who are most vulnerable to systemic biases. So I'm going to pick this apart here. How we can use that role illegitimately. So they don't put that's my word. So how they can use that role. So the unintended use of that role is what they're alluding to. Illegitimately protect our people, liberals, progressives, blacks, or whomever, trans people who might shoot up a school or shoot Charlie Kirk. Protect our people, liberals, especially those with marginalized identities, people of color, trans, LGBTQ, etc., or their allies, disproportionately targeted by the criminal legal system, where there's no proof of that whatsoever. There is no proof that people with marginalized identities or the identities who describe their people are being disproportionately targeted by the criminal legal system. All those are lies. Objectivity. That may be the word of the day tomorrow, but we're not talking about objectivity. We're talking about corruption today. They are telling people to use jury nullification so that even if their people are accused of a crime, even if it's an open and shut case, to use the jury nullification to get those to thwart security conviction. Then it goes on to say participation in juries is vital to safeguard the rights of those who are most vulnerable to systemic biases. So what they're trying to say here is that people are arrested not for crimes they committed, but because of their identities. That's absolutely a lie. You could talk to any law enforcement official, and people aren't being arrested or charged with criminal behavior because of their identities. So what they're trying to allude to is that everybody commits crimes, but the whites get away with it, and the blacks or the trans or gay or whatever are unfairly targeted through bias. It is a conspiracy of corruption. And like I said, the Overton window of morality is saying that it's okay to lie, cheat, steal, whatever, because the system has bias against you. Well, I am no fan of the system, certainly. I don't mean the capitalist system. I mean the entrenched bureaucracy that unfairly targets people for their belief, mostly political belief in opposition, let's say, of what they want to do, et cetera, et cetera. Not because you're gay or you're black or whatever. That has nothing to do with what you believe in. You could be a communist. Spouting communism or socialist rhetoric is not against the law. Being a communist is not against the law. You can't be convicted of being a communist or a socialist or whatever. Being gay is not against the law. Being black is not against the law. Even wanting black nationalism isn't against the law, or Christian or white nationalism. It's not against the law. Wanting that, believing in that isn't against the law. The left would make you think that certain ideas are against the law. They're just not. Okay. Criminal behavior, violation of criminal code, is by its nature against the law. That's what it is. So the left would turn around with this argument and go, well, Trump he's a criminal. Not really. There's nothing cut and dry there to say that he's done anything criminal. You could say, if you believe, but he hasn't. And especially when it comes down to the E. Jean Carroll thing, that was a civil case, that he was responsible for defamation based on the premise that supposedly he raped her in a department store changing room, where there's no evidence to suggest he ever did that, or that he was ever in that changing room with her. All right. More lies. The Federalist. The left's top 25 lies of 2025. I'm going to go through these quickly. Maryland man, we know what that is. He's an illegal alien. Who cares? Whether he's criminal or not doesn't really matter. Lies about ICE. Obviously, ICE is fulfilling their obligation as federal law enforcement, enforcing federal law. That's all there is to it. There's nothing more to it, is that they're enforcing federal law. They're looking for illegal aliens and then deporting them. ICE kidnapping people, not true. First of all law enforcement has the right to detain anybody, even children, for a certain amount of time to discern whether or not they've committed a crime, or in the case of ICE, whether they're in the country illegally. Shipwrecked sailors, which is courtesy of the congressman from my state, Jim Himes. They're drug smugglers. They might not be narco-terrorists, but they were drug smugglers. They're not shipwrecked sailors. This isn't the USS Minnow. This isn't Gilligan and the skipper. Illegal alien superintendent. So if you didn't know what this one was, the superintendent of Des Moines Public Schools had a long history of criminal behavior, and he had a deportation order. He was a legal alien. But they hired him anyway. To lead Iowa's largest public school system. Stupid. One stupid step for womankind. This has to do with the Blue Origin rocket that had Gayle King and all these other women on it, Katy Perry, Laura Sanchez. I don't even think they went into space. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. It was this weird thing where the rocket landed and then the press had to be cleared away before they could do the exit video. And it looked like they all walked into the back of the capsule and then walked out. You know, their hair wasn't messed up. It was all coiffed. It looked contrived. So when something looks contrived, I can't really go along with thinking that it wasn't completely contrived. Did they go up in the rocket? Maybe. I mean, there's footage of them being in weightlessness. Did they go into space? It looks like they went to the top of the atmosphere, upper atmosphere, but it's hard to even say. I thought it was ridiculous stunt, and I don't give a two shits about feminism. Women have equal rights, as far as I'm concerned. But I don't think they deserve any special. I don't believe people should get special treatment for whatever. You want a that a boy or that a girl? Good for you. But it's, it's like my wife. She wants to rule the roost, but then it comes to like, well, I need special treatment because I'm the girl. So they want the best of both worlds. Pick one. You want equal treatment or you want special treatment? Well, it's just like everybody else with a marginalized identity. I want special treatment, but I want to be treated like everyone else, but I want special treatment also. Ukraine on the verge of victory. We know that's not true. Ukraine never had a military much to speak of, and the only reason they're succeeding is because of NATO's help and the United States' help and Western special forces and intelligence help. I mean, and weaponry. It's shutdown, meltdown. Oh, yeah, it was all because of the Republicans. It really wasn't. It was because of the Democrats, and they were holding out for no specific reason. And if anybody did get hurt, which no one really did get hurt by the shutdown, it was the Republicans' fault, when really, if anybody did get hurt, it was the Democrats' fault, and it was a big show just for nothing. Then the auto pen presidency. No, Joe Biden signed all these things himself, including the pardon of his son, which he said he would never pardon, blah, blah, blah. He probably just didn't remember. Save lives. If you don't know what the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act said, it wasn't necessary because non-citizens voting in federal election is already a crime, but there's no enforcement. The SAVE Act would have provided enforcement or investigations into these things. Epstein deceit. We all know it's not just Trump. It's mostly Democrats in there. Misleading edit. So what they're trying to say here, of course, is it's the BBC's documentary on Donald Trump. Trump, a second chance, question mark. It was before the 2024 election where they were saying he doesn't deserve to get another chance or another shot at the presidency because of January 6th. He goaded people into riot at the Capitol, which was a lie, and they deceptively edited it on purpose. Also, as I said, BBC is state TV, so it's state propaganda, obviously aimed at Trump. Why would the British government care about who we elect for president? Conspiracy. So, but of course, people on the left said, oh, it was just, whoops, it was a whoopsie. Somebody in the editing room took a liberty they shouldn't have taken, and blah, blah, blah. Bullshit. California scheming, free and fair elections. If you don't know what this is, California's slimy chief executive, Gavin Newsom, says the state's mid-decade gerrymandering to secure more Democratic congressional seats is all about democracy. Well, it wasn't. It was revenge for red state Texas's redrawing of its map to benefit Republicans. Really, it wasn't just to benefit Republicans. It was to undo the gerrymandering done by Democrats that was allowing certain districts to be weighted with black districts. So you'd add a little black district onto a Republican district to make it more Democrat. And as the Supreme Court ruled, that's what they were trying to undo, is the racist policy of the Democrats is adding bits of black districts to Republican districts to give them a shot at that district. Fascisizing, we all know what that is. The fact that the Democrats call everybody a fascist, when being on the right is not, being conservative is not a fascist. Just means you don't want, there's nothing conservative about not wanting the federal government to spend money, because why? Federal government spends money and then most of it's stolen. Weaponizing lies. Trump has weaponized the DOJ to bully, prosecute, and punish, silence his foes. No, that's what the Democrats did. So he's actually prosecuting people for crimes like James Comey, who leaked classified information. And if you are the head of a federal agency leaking classified information, that is a crime. It's actually treason if you're a head. I mean, if you're an FBI agent and you leak something, sure, that's punishable. But if you're the head of the agency, you should presumably know better, right? You should be held, people of higher position should be held to a higher account. And the punishment should be more severe. We're not talking about E. Jean Carroll or saying your property in Mar-a-Lago is worth $800 million when it's only worth $8 million or something like that, which is speculative. Jimmy Kimmel is a victim. No, he's not. He's a propagandist that works for the media, the leftist. Whether you're witting or unwitting, whether you really have the liberal mind virus and you convince yourself that all this leftist crap is true, all this leftist propaganda is misdirection to cover the fact that they have their hand in the cookie jar. I mean, billions, trillions of dollars. We all know what happened with hundreds of billions of dollars going to Ukraine. It was all kicked back to the Democratic Party. It's the same thing with that crypto company scam. Same fucking thing. They gave money to this kid who was running a crypto exchange. Whoops. Oh, all the money disappeared. Where did it go? Is getting kicked back to the Democratic Party. Socialism will save us. We all know that's a lie. Iran doesn't want nuclear weapons. Yeah. NPR is unbiased. Obviously not true. It's just more propaganda to cover for corruption. The fallacy of Mahmoud Khalil. He was just a student at Columbia University. He wasn't actually a legal alien that overstayed his visa. Should have been deported, if you ask me, for his anti-Semitic rhetoric and stirring up these protests on college campuses, and you're not even a U.S. citizen. Spartacus' long, meaningless speech. I'm talking about Senator Cory Booker, who had a 25-hour filibuster speech on the Senate floor where he talked about, no one could remember what he talked about. How we're going to battle Trump. Oh, okay. Well, you suck. It's all, again, misdirection, propagandizing the effort to spend more money to steal. It's corruption. And what you do is the same thing that the Chinese do, is all the money you steal billions. Well, you go back and you grease the people that helped you steal. Texas floods truth twister, which is basically about what happened in Texas flood, where the Democrats hope to lay the blame on Trump for staffing shortages at the National Weather Service. White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt called them out for a depraved lie. Indeed it was, noting that NWS offices in the region, including centers in San Antonio and San Angelo, were fully staffed and issued timely and precise warnings that the people didn't heed, apparently, or weren't listening to the radio. You know, you're in a floodplain. It does, I don't want to get into it. It's a tragic event, but it wasn't Trump's fault. However, if you want to go to Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans, George Bush, actually, before the hurricane came, pulled funding from the Army Corps of Engineers to fix levees in and around New Orleans, specifically the 9th Ward, 12 to 8 months before Hurricane Katrina hit, knowing that they even said a direct hit by a hurricane will break the levees and flood millions. Exactly what happened. The No Kings thing, we know about that. As such, when progressives say they're protecting democratic norms, they are in reality protecting their dominance within the unelected government bureaucracy, the mainstream media ecosystem, academia, and other institutions that operate beyond the reach of American voters, all of which Trump is seeking to either reform or dismantle, that's part of the conspiracy. The lies that live on. They're talking about Obamacare. How keep your plan, keep your doctor. That none of that was true. All right, moving on to the next article. Fox News, Eric Adams says Biden DOJ used lawfare against him. Compares treatment to Trump. New York City Mayor Eric Adams argues personal experience showed him firsthand the abuse of the justice system. Indeed. Again, lies. Oh, we didn't do that. That's exactly what they did. It was used the same schematic. Post-millennial, New York City poised to force landlords to sell private property to nonprofits to ensure affordable housing. The bill would require landlords to sell their New York City property to liberal NGOs. Yeah, I don't understand that. That's communism. The government forcing you to sell private property to minions of the government. PJ Media, George Clooney says au revoir to Hollywood, goes French with wife and twins. Actor and hardcore liberal George Clooney has packed up his wife and their 8-year-old twins and headed off to France, where they have become French citizens. Why? To escape Hollywood culture. The irony is very same. Liberal ideology, the policies Clooney has long championed, helped create the culture. He is now fleeing. Yeah, he's a dumbass. I mean, he might very well believe what he's spouting. But realistically, it's all written in the Constitution, the originalist version thereof, which is protect individual liberties for all people, including ones you don't like freedom of speech and the Second Amendment. All people, trans people, black people, women, all people, everybody. You don't get special rights. You get these enshrined individual liberties. The smallest minority is the individual. Everybody gets them. There's no need to protest and say it's the end of democracy. It's all this. No, it's not. No end of democracy. There's no end to the Constitution. Trump is assailing the Constitution. He isn't. None of this is true. It's not an end of democracy. The end of democracy is if you look at the corruption by the liberals and the progressives, they steal elections through various processes. That's damaging democracy, damaging the process of electing representatives. So they're elected instead of appointed from the people. That's a republic. We're a constitutional democratic republic. Always. Now and forever. Post-millennial, judge allows media access to transcript audio of hearing involved alleged Charlie Kirk assassination with some redactions. Safety concerns are well-recognized justification for closure of court records. Court records, and the New York Post echoes this. Charlie Kirk suspect Tyler Robinson's secret hearing to be made public with redactions. So let me tell you something about this. Both these articles are wrong, damaging. Wrong and damaging. Why? Apparently, the hearing, and none of these articles even discussed it, the hearing discussed medication Tyler Robinson was on. That'll come out in the court. That's crucial to describe his state of mind. But they don't want to put it out too early. They discussed a bunch of other things that they may or may not discuss, or what can go on, whether or not he can appear outside of shackles and in civilian clothes, all these things. He's a lunatic that succumbed to the liberal mind virus, was probably on medication. At least that's what they were discussing, as many young people who commit violence. And there goes the second half of what the fuck I'm talking about today, is young people succumbing to the liberal mind virus and the ideology and the hate within that ideology, and propagandized through movies like, what is it? Another Battle, One Battle After Another. And then, of course, these medications where the black box warnings say could cause suicidal and or homicidal ideation. And what is ideation? It means you get the idea in your head, you can't get rid of it. It may cause mania. So you get manic about a homicidal ideation, and it gets its hooks in you, and you literally could drive all the way across country and not lose that ideation. So you carry through on your mission. So will we find out whether he was on SSRIs? Who knows? But it seems like everybody else who commits these school shootings was on psychoactive medication. PJ Media: a new law could finally put a stop to those trying to obstruct police officers from doing their job. A new federal law could make cops' jobs more easy, or provide them with a reason to punish these bystanders for thinking they're above the law. Senator Ashley Moody has announced the new HALO Act that she hopes to swear into federal law. This would potentially do away with violence and harassment against police officers trying to do their job, speaking specifically about ICE, or at the very least, give them a chance to punish those trying to interfere with their job. Moody noted, as the wife of a law enforcement officer, former attorney general, and now United States Senator, I have always supported and fought for the selfless individuals who protect and serve our nation. I'm appalled at the news reports of people harassing and targeting federal officers while they're simply trying to do their jobs. This must end. There was recently a story also where a police officer jumped in front of somebody before they were shot, and he ended up dying. Talk about selfless. Next article up here is from Fox News. Trucker slapped with charges in fatal driving incident, previously immigrated to the U.S. illegally. The fatal wreck comes amid heightened awareness and national concerns about the untrained, unqualified illegal immigrant drivers. Trucker who allegedly killed 3 in a reckless driving incident in Virginia immigrated to the U.S. illegally in the 90s. El Haji Karamoko Quatera, a 58-year-old immigrant from Africa, is being charged in connection with a failed crash. The outlet reported that the victims were killed and a 73-year-old male and a 10-year-old female survived. I imagine his status is still illegal. It doesn't matter. He came to the country illegally, whether he was granted some sort of protected status. He's a criminal, as far as I'm concerned. Well, he's certainly a criminal now, but you don't want criminals coming to your country, period. So the only way criminals can really come in, because you can't come in illegally if you have a record. We don't let criminals into our country. The only way criminals can get into the country is if they come illegally. PJ Media: Harvard says yes to discrimination, no to Western Civ. The problem is here at Harvard University, professors who teach Western history are history. James Hankins, a specialist in Renaissance thought, was one of the last holdouts at Harvard. Hankins, who just published a hefty book that teaches what Harvard doesn't, The Golden Thread, History of the Western Tradition, has decamped from the university for the University of Florida's Hamilton School of Classical and Civic Education. The loss isn't just Harvard's. The replacement of Western history by global history has done serious harm to the socialization of young Americans. When you don't teach the young what civilization is, it turns out people become uncivilized. I partially agree with this. It's the preeminence of the European Renaissance that has affected history since then, global history since then, which is mostly important. However, I do agree partially with the fact is that world history isn't taught enough. I certainly wasn't taught enough. I taught myself subsequently, but wasn't taught enough about the Asian empires, Islamic expansionism, okay, but specifically the Asian empires, because that is the only alternate point of view. They weren't greater than European empire, certainly European empires, certainly, but they did play a role in, I don't know, pre-15th century, pre-16th century. I mean, and that's when you get into ancient civilization and stuff. But I think it's worth noting. If you go past the Asian empires, then you get into ancient civ, which is a whole other thing. But I think everybody should learn about history and obviously geography. And I thought that wasn't taught very well at all. I learned American history, and that was about it in school. Most of the other shit I learned ancient civilization later. And when I learned about ancient civilization, the way they taught it was inadequate. You know, they didn't talk about politics and expansionism, military conquest, et cetera, et cetera. What they talk about is the architecture and artwork and cultural shit. But also you have the Mesoamerican empires and stuff like that. It's all very interesting. And if you put it on a timeline, I think is a better way to teach it. I wish I was taught from beginning of civilization to the end. I think, world civilization, that's a good way to do it. To teach history is from the beginning to the end and where they all fit on the timeline. All right. I digress a little bit too much into that. I love history. That's why. National Review, the other Palisades fire scandal. Speaking of history, Los Angeles' failure to prepare and to respond to the Palisades fire because it was on purpose that incinerated much of the city in January of this year. Mayor Karen Bass now seems to be covering up her missteps rather than trying to correct them. Meanwhile, she was just on a talking circuit recently. Meanwhile, other Palisades fire scandal unfolds in broad daylight. The incredible failure of municipal governments in Los Angeles to allow for timely rebuilding. In the year since the fire destroyed 13,000 homes across Los Angeles, precisely one house has been fully rebuilt and certified for occupancy. One fucking house. Because the reason for the fire was to build a smart city. And the government is angling to get most of that land, but they're under a lot of scrutiny, so all they're just doing is delaying. It's a stalling tactic to drag their feet, because then hopefully times change, maybe after the midterms, whatever. And right now they're planning to fleece the billionaires to build their smart city. Anyway, I don't want to get too much into that. All right, next headline, just the news. U.S. Supreme Court to decide Louisiana redistricting dispute with national implications. If you didn't know what this was, this is what I was recently talking about also. Voting Rights Act, protections for minority voters with the Constitution's limit on race-based government decision-making. So this has to do with whether or not how you redraw the district. If you're redrawing a district to get more black voters in there or to excuse black voters from that district, either or is race-based. So how do you get to a happy medium, right? That's what Texas was trying to do, is redraw the districts without those black community voters. And so they're doing the same thing in California. They're redrawing it to add race-based communities, which they believe will vote for them. Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, electoral practices that result in racial minority voters having less opportunity than other members of the electorate to participate in the political process, do their elected representative of their choice. I just want it fair. I think there should be federal election commissions that looked at districting. A bipartisan, you know what I mean? To make it as fair as possible, but who knows? All right. Fox News, Nashville shooter Audrey Hale allegedly used federal student aid to buy guns for school attack. More than 100 pages include journal entries from 2021 and handwritten notes. She hates religion, targeted a Christian school. It was a hate crime, obviously. In an entry, Hale wrote that the grant check started at $2,000, followed by ledger-styled notes documenting payments from Nazi College in Art and Design in Nashville, where Hale was enrolled at the time. But the fact is here is that the financial entries appear alongside extensive notes about firearms she planned to purchase in the attack. Hale's parents reportedly told investigators that her child had used the Pell Grant money to purchase firearms and use the attack. So it's still corruption. You didn't use the money to go to college. You used the money to buy guns in this diluted mind virus attack. And she was also on psychoactive drugs. So the psychoactive drugs plus the ideology lead to these sort of shootings. And it also applies to this individual, post-millennial, RNC, DNC pipe bomber, suspect confessed to planting explosive devices, but you have to understand here is that he's mentally compromised. Of course, that's why he was targeted. He probably had handlers that told him how to do this, to what to do. He was seen waving at Capitol Police as he was walking around aimlessly in the city, and at one point stops and looks directly into a surveillance camera and looks up at the sky. Why you would look up at the sky? And he was looking on his phone, obviously communicating with what I suspect are federal agents or assets who are leading this young mentally ill person to do these acts. There's no way this guy came up with this on his own. I mean, come on. The day of what was it called? What was that thing called? The voting, beat the cheat rally. Got a couple more articles to get through here. So next we're going to go to Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens, of course. Now, Candace Owens, you could argue, is anti-Semitic because her acquaintance with Kanye West. Hold on a second. But Tucker Carlson is a no. He is not anti-Semitic. Just because you question Israel doesn't mean you're anti-Semitic. So the Jerusalem Post has the headline, Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens dramatically increased Israel focus in recent months. Of course he did. AI analysis found that Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens sharply increased anti-Israel content, with Owens also showing a rise in explicit anti-Semitic messaging. So what they're trying to do is connect Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens, and there's no real connection there. The study published on Sunday by the Jewish People Policy Institute found that there was a marked escalation in Carlson and Owens' anti-Israel rhetoric. Well, anti-Israel rhetoric, I don't even know what that is. Why do I have to like Israel? I don't not like Israel. I don't care. I don't think I'm a Zionist. I guess I am. I don't know. Should the Jewish people have a homeland? I guess. Why not? Two-state solution? Okay, whatever. Great. But I don't have to like everything the Israeli government does. But you're trying to conflate one thing with another. Why? That has nothing to do with, do I like Jewish people? I like some, I don't like others. I mean, so what? I mean, just like everybody, any other group. But I don't like this sort of thing like, oh, you can't criticize anybody that's Jewish or criticize the Jewish state. I understand what happened in Gaza and with Hamas and stuff, so I don't need to go down that rabbit hole anymore. Such content included videos discussing comparisons between Israel and Hamas, using the term genocide. Oh no, accusing Israel of deliberately killing children, and the spreading of conspiratorial narratives regarding Israel or Jewish influence on the U.S. government. Well, realistically, that's all true. Is it a genocide? I don't know. They've killed a lot of civilians there. I mean, they leveled Gaza. I mean, is that, conspiratorial narratives regarding Israel or Jewish influence in the U.S. government? Well, there is. There is. I mean, Netanyahu was just at Mar-a-Lago. Is there Jewish influence in the U.S. government? To say there isn't, I think is ridiculous. Now, what do you mean by Jewish influence? You mean Israeli influence or just Jewish influence? I mean, we have a lot of Jewish people living in the United States. Should they, if they're citizens, they should have the right to influence their representatives and henceforth influence the administration, et cetera, et cetera. Influence policy. Right? It's like it's a strange infatuation with American citizens influencing their government. Okay. In any case, generalizations about Jews, including describing them as a cult. No, they're not really a cult. Liberals are a cult, sharing claims of Jewish supremacy and representing accusations of control, deceit, manipulation alongside recurring claims and accusations of anti-Semitism are a Zionist diversion tactic. Maybe. I don't know. They're not a cult. I mean, there's all groups. See, it's tribalism. All groups look out for their group, whether it's Somalis or Zionists or blacks or, I try to look out for all people or individuals. That's the balance there. All or the one in the all in the one. That's how it works. It's either all or one. The problem is it gets confused somewhere along the line. People start looking at groups. All of us, tribalism. Not just all of us, like all the people in the world, like humanity, or, not even a group. You could say a nation, all U.S. citizens, or all the people living in the United States. It's not really a group. A group has a delineation. So all blacks or all Jews or all American citizens. No, I'm just kidding. There's no delineation there because an American citizen could be anybody. But only a Jew could be a Jew, and only a black could be a black, or Indian, or Hispanic. Only a Hispanic could be a Hispanic, or only a white person could be a white, or only a Catholic could be a Catholic. So when you say all people, I mean all people. You know, it's a geographic boundary. That delineation is okay. All the people living in the United States. More news. The wrap, entertainment, media layoffs up 18% with over 17,000 jobs slashed in 2025. Wave of consolidation. No. AI-driven change. That's it. AI-driven change and cost cutting. Because AI-driven change is indeed cost cutting. New York Post. Outraged journos to urge David Ellison to protect CBS News independence after Barry Weiss pulled 60 Minutes. So the point is, it's former CBS News journalists are preparing a petition. They're former CBS News. So what, if you're former, what right do you have to petition the CEO of a company you don't work for anymore? And Barry Weiss is doing what Ellison wanted her to do, is make the news division more objective and stop, so they could stop being labeled as anti-Trump or anti-conservative, which they were. And the CBS Minutes piece was clearly didn't have the opposing point of view represented. The administration is conducting the deportations. So not to have their point of view is antithetical to journalism. Okay, a couple more here. Oklahoma man, this is Washington Times, Oklahoma man firing a gun in yard, fatally shoots neighbor sitting blocks away, authorities say. So this guy, Cody Wayne Adams, 33, got a gun for himself for Christmas, and he was discharging it in his backyard, and he shot somebody. Big fucking surprise. That's why you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed, where I live, it's a close-knit suburbia, but you can't discharge a firearm in city limits. And I guess in Oklahoma you can. But maybe the houses were apart, but this idiot didn't make sure he had a backstop. You're doing target practice horizontally with no backstop, no earth mound, or without an iron backstop or anything like that. What a fucking idiot. So usually if you're doing something like that, you want to shoot from your porch, shoot down into the ground. So you know the trajectory. First of all, I don't think you should be able to have a fucking firearm until you take a physics test or I don't know, geometry. You got to know ballistics. You got to know motion. You got to know, you shoot a bullet. If there's nothing there to stop it, it's just going to keep traveling. The trajectory will follow. It'll go through a piece of wood or anything flimsy, and it'll just keep traveling. Something in motion will stay in motion, right? So if you ever threw a hammer in space, it would go forever. Okay, I'm sorry I put that in there. It's a gun safety thing. Is if you shoot a gun, you have to have a proper backstop. Or else you're going to kill somebody. Especially if it's like with a rifle and you don't have a backstop, you could kill someone a mile away. Fox News. OpenAI tightens AI rules for teens, but concerns remain. New safeguards to protect minors, but critics question enforcement. Yeah, the whole thing is a law without enforcement is no law. Several recent tragedies have raised concerns and questions about the role of AI chatbots may play with teen mental health. And it's not teen mental health. This happened to adults as well. So now they're just like, it's harmful to teens' mental health. It's harmful for everyone's mental health. One widely reported case, a teenager who later died by suicide spent months interacting with chatbot. Conversation logs show repeated mirroring and validation of distress. Internal systems flagged hundreds of messages related to self-harm. Yet, just to interject here is that, yeah, no shit. AI is really friggin' dangerous, and it's gonna be the prison guard of us all. You'll see. But at least you'll have someone to talk to when you're locked in your home. While they slip friggin' poison-laden food under your door and insist that you get vaccinated by drones who visit your home. It's coming. It's coming. If the liberals get their way, if the progressives get their way, because don't forget, technological progressivism is also progressivism. All right. Zero hedge, where do microplastics come from? Anyway, well, they come mostly from synthetic textiles. So your clothes. Dummies. I was wondering why it was so hard to find just cotton clothes. We're way over now. It's like 20 minutes. Sorry about that. Yeah, you can't find, I have to search high and low to find cotton clothes. Hey, I have synthetic clothes too, but I mostly wear cotton and wool. But it's hard to find like 100% cotton t-shirts anymore. Fuck. So it's mostly synthetic textiles, tires, city dust, road markings, but the majority is synthetic textiles. Bring back natural textiles. Please stop watering down the cotton with polyester blends. The Hill, we are the free world now. Europe declares war on free speech in the U.S. Raphael Glucksmann, a French socialist member of the European Parliament. Because Marco Rubio says that we're not going to work. We're going to ban people that are censor members of the global censorship industrial complex from entering the U.S. Good. And this all is around X. Having to do with X is because they're censoring people on X. They're censorious. That's the New World Order. It's tyranny. It's coming for us. They're trying to get rid of the U.S. constitutional-based system, individual liberties that are enshrined. They don't want that to be exported worldwide anymore. And since we're short of time, I'm just going to quickly go through this article. AP, China threatens detention of Xinjiang over banned Uyghur song. So, Pede Besh, you could be arrested and sent to prison if you start singing or download a popular Uyghur folk ballad. It's among dozens of Uyghur language songs that have been deemed problematic by Xinjiang authorities. So you could go to prison for that. All right, I went way over today. Sorry about that. Thanks for joining me. Don't forget to engage the channel, like, subscribe, share the podcast. Live Monday through Friday, every day, 10 a.m. on Rumble and YouTube. Thanks for joining me today. Check me out on social media. Don't forget you're under attack psychologically, biologically. Say hip to that trick. And possible episode of Tuesdays with Perry tonight. So check back around 9:15. We go live. Then usually on Tuesdays. I'll have to see how it goes. But thanks for joining me today. Sorry I went long. Oh my God, it was like an hour and 20 minutes. Hour and 19 minutes. But thanks for joining me today. All right. I'll see you tomorrow or maybe tonight for a Tuesdays with Perry episode. Otherwise, I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for joining this long-winded episode. I went down a rabbit hole a couple times, but thanks for sticking with me. No tech difficulties today, and that's a good thing. All right. I'll see you later. Respect.
You're crazy. You're crazy. I like you. But you're crazy.